Okay, so for this first code up, we're going to have to do some setup. We're going to have to walk you through how to set up your GitHub, how to join the organization, and then we'll actually break this into a couple of videos so they don't get really long. But once we get through some of this setup, should run, hopefully this shouldn't be that bad either. So the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need a GitHub account. And some of you may already have one, especially if you've taken my CIT93 or even my CIT92. I've already covered GitHub in those courses, and it is hoped that you will have done one of those before you got here, but if not, you'll be okay. So I've given a link here to GitHub, and I'm already logged into my account. And I also have set up, just so you know when I switch over, I have in Firefox, I have another Gmail account, my student account, that I'll use to show you what it looks like. Because over here in Chrome, I'm actually logged in as the administrator. Okay, so the first step we're going to do, or the first step you need to do, and this is really important to understand, is that you're going to need to set up that GitHub account. You can use whatever account you want as far as Gmail, but you have to set up a GitHub account. And then once you do that, you'll get a GitHub username, okay? And then you'll email me through Canvas using the inbox here. Just email me your GitHub username, okay? And then once you do that, I'll invite you into the organization. So until you do this step, you can't do any of the others. So way important. So I've given you a link here to go to GitHub. It opens in a blank, which basically means in a new tab. And by the way, if you don't already know the HTML to do that, we'll show you. And then you create your account. You walk through and you create it. And then once you get in, this will look somewhat similar to what you have. Now the step I'm about to do is not a step you have to do. I'm just letting you kind of see behind the scenes a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to our what we call organization inside of GitHub. Okay, and then what I'm going to do here is actually I'm not going to create a new repo. I'm going to go ahead and view the organization. Again, this is stuff you don't see, but I'm going to go to people. And so when you email me your GitHub account, your username, here's what I do. I invite you in, and that's my student account. Okay, so that's why, and by the way, you can give me your just whatever email you use there, but it's just easier to know this. So I'm going to go ahead and do invite. So now I actually have to log in again so that I have that logged in. And so in this case, we're going to give you, oh, I guess I had this already. No, we're going to do a fresh start. Again, not stuff you have to worry about. You're going to be a member, and optionally, we're not going to put you on a team. So now you've been invited. So now what will that look like? Well, inside of your, and you can already see I got it here, inside of your whatever email account you use, you will get a notification saying you've been invited to this. If for some crazy reason you haven't, the other thing you can do, and here's why I'm showing you this, is in here I also provide, which is what we're going to do next, a link to the organization itself. And the reason I do that, I will show you by going actually to here, because the link will work, 93. It actually will show you you've been invited, and that's the whole reason I've shown you this, is to say that, just to show you that if for some reason you don't see that invite, because I've had that happen a couple times with students, hopefully whatever reason they got either put into the junk mail or spammed or whatever, you should have this as a workaround. So I'm going to go ahead and just view the invite here, and I'm going to go ahead and join the course. So now, boom, I'm in, right? So I'm in, I can see the other people that are here, and so now we're actually ready, and I'm going to go ahead and flip back over to the instructions to do the next step, okay? So once you get in, you have to join, and I didn't say that here specifically, but I showed you. So now you're going to create 2 repos in this organization for our course, and here's the standard I want you to use. Your first name, the first letter of your last name, underscore, and then private, and this is or public. And actually you're going to create 2, so one will be private and the next one will be public. Okay, and this is giving you just a little more instruction here on that, and then I'll show you. But in the process, I'll just tell you before we do it, you're going to have to set up what's called a Git Ignore file. And this is for your editor for later on once we clone this locally, which we will do in the next video. But in this case, I've given you a link to an example one that I found out on the web. And so this is what you'll use. I'm just telling you now so when we get to that step, you'll see this. Now, having said that, and I said this in the first video before the semester starts, is that if you're going to use something besides VS Code, you're just going to want to go find a Git Ignore file for your particular editor. And now if you don't know what a Git Ignore file is, don't worry too much about it, but just a brief FYI here. It's so that there is particular files that get set up in the local directory for your editor. So there's, as a matter of fact, here, it shows you it's going to ignore some of these, and we will add most likely here as we move through, especially when we add Node.js. Matter of fact, I should probably go ahead and do that, but for now this will be okay. Because one of the things you're going to do, and it's a little bit of a side topic here, but you're going to actually install Node, and then in Node you'll have these things called Node modules. So what I'll show you how to do is to update this for that specific situation. But for now, let's just go ahead and set this repo up. So in your and now I'm going to switch over to the student account or your view, and you're going to create a repo. Okay, so in this case it shows you and you'll want to make sure you're in this 93. And so for me it would be my first, and by the way, do these in lowercase w underscore private. Okay, so now this is the private one. We'll come back in a minute and we'll do a public one because you'll need both, but to start we'll need the private one. Okay, and I'll just say Rio's student account, just so we know what that is. It's good to put in your first name and last name so we know. And then I'm going to go ahead and initialize that Git Ignore here. Good. Oh, it's just going to add it with nothing in there. Okay, I forgot about that part. No big deal. And we'll just leave the license as none here. And this is really more when you're doing professional development and you want other people to know how your software is licensed. So we'll go ahead and create. And remember, so on this first one, we're doing private, right? And that's the naming standard I want. We'll go ahead and create that. Good. So now we see that this is indeed created. And I don't see the Git Ignore file. Maybe that's because it's only when you download it. Okay, that's good that I'm doing this step so we can actually talk about that as we go through, and probably when we clone that will show up. I have to do a little, because I actually thought it did, but maybe I accidentally did it without marking the step. We'll see next time. Okay, so let's do another one. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the next one. So now we're going to do another one, and this one will be public, right? And then you'll make this one public when you create it. So let's go back to here for you, right? So now you will be able to see this one, and you will be able to see it's private, but other people won't be able to see this, but I will. Okay, so that's important to understand. And let's go ahead and create another one. And this one will be Rio W. And this one will be public. And this will be for various things that I'll want you to share, like print screens and stuff like that, that I'll show you how to do later. And this should have, and actually on the other one, and I'll modify this. I'm going to do this one is public, right? Anyone who chooses can commit. Anyone can see this repo. There we go. We're initializing. Oh, maybe that's what it was. I bet you 10 that's what it was. And let's see. I have looked through here before. And by the way, I digressed a little bit here. And this was one of the things I wanted to do, was to initialize the Readme file. We'll talk about that later. And then add a Git Ignore with none. Because I think, if I remember right, yeah, there is Visual Studio, but that thing is so long. But that's okay. We can actually modify it. So I'll go ahead and add it, because before it was none, and that's why it didn't add it. So now it makes sense. Okay. So hopefully maybe you watched this through a little bit before you do the other one, but if you didn't, it's okay. We can modify it as no problem. Let's create that. All right, so now we have another one. And it did create that. Cool. All right. So here's what I'm going to go ahead and show you this. is that when you're doing Visual Studio, it's different than VS Code, okay? Visual Studio is the full-blown IDE from Microsoft, and VS Code is a much smaller, not full IDE, having some IDE features. An IDE is an integrated development environment, but this one has a lot more things than you need on it. So let me actually show you how to modify this now that we're here. So let me go ahead here and go ahead and grab this file, because this is for now all I needed, right? Now again, the reason we're doing this now is that these set it up so that when we clone locally, these things are set up and ready to go. Now here I'm going to do Control A and Control V. And then here at the bottom, and this is the first time you may, if you've never used GitHub, you're committing a change, and it gives you some kind of standard stuff, but we'll go ahead and update the Git Ignore file. Is that right? Seems like that's wrong. Is it actually? Oh, Git Ignore. So it's actually Git Ignore file for update for VS Code specific. Good. And then we're going to directly onto the master, and that's what we want here. Okay, so actually in this case what we've done is we've made a change to our repo out on the what we call the web interface. We will end up doing it locally, I'm just kind of doing a little bit of preview here. So by the way, I've done that. Let's actually go do it for the other one in case you missed that one as well. No big deal. Now by the way, you can tell here that this one's private, this one's public. And again, the private one is between only you and I. So we're actually going to create a new file here, right? And so this will be the .git. Is that right? Let me just make sure, just so. Actually, I can just copy it so I make sure I type it right. There we go. We're not going to use a template, right? So I'm going to come back over here and grab this again, and this is just copying and pasting. And now we're going to do, now we're actually creating, so create the Git Ignore. Creating for public, for private. Okay, good, and we'll commit it. Okay, so good. So now we actually have this set up, right? That's the Readme file right here. And now, if we flip over, I'm just going to show you this. Now again, this is looking at it from my perspective. I will say I will see your account, right? And in this case, I will see too. But when you look at other people add theirs, the only one that you will see is their public one. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm actually going to stop at this point, so so that you kind of get to chunk it as far as the content goes. And then if you run into any issues with this step, make sure you ask me before you continue on to the next. Let me go ahead and pull over here. And I'll see you in the next video.